Yo.
Starting off with that Naughty Royal. Shout out Naughty Royal.
More. What up?
We tried to warn you.
Give me the corruption money. Give me the corruption money. Give me the corruption money. Same natty with a new fade, got the mark of a new age. Why these fake gods toothpaste? They love games if I do play. They in my palm like loose grade, another loose grade. Y'all get justice in the court. Police just wanna extort. Coast Guard wanna export. Westwoods wanna act Porsche. Till they see me whipping in the Porsche. Hard weed in the exhaust. Bust a laugh cause you vex lost. I bust a laugh cause I know you want the guy who hype to jump on the mic to make you bubble and ting. I am not the sort of the type, but I can flow tight and my lyrics couldn't make a man think. Cubes in my eyes, seeing everything linked. Now I feel so woke, dog, that I can't blink. While talking the truth and you know you can't drink. Call I can't get my vote, dog, I'll let you stink. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. Coming into my own. Seeds gotta get sown. Food gotta get grown. Looking out for my home. They say they blessed, but they obsessed with the flesh. Now I gotta pick a bone. Staying on my line on the door, pay rent. They didn't give me nothing for the enslavement. I make all this so fast when you feel it is lent. Starting today, you go make payments. Our big stink links from my chest. My own fabrics so my gal look best. My own holidays too, worship and zest. On school for we youths, we don't want them be best. Too many in jail, can't get no justice. I'm to legalize it, like the prison compress. Burn all plastics, I don't want less. If you can't give me that, then you better has press. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. Where the corruption money? Give me the corruption money. My dust, my vibe, my dust. Stacks over cars, dog, my money can't afford. Everything cash, dog, fuck a car loan. Pull up to the dance, girl, by the car load. They never seen a drop top on a Prado. Tin so dark, that my name turn who? Touch a roadblock, then look at the road through. The police say stop, my window drop. He say sorry, the boss, didn't know it was you. All my contacts have big contracts, and I never worry about the income tax. Send it to dry clean, I can't play that. Up in the casino, 10 towers on black like oh Lord, the car don't spin. Big mansion for my dogs and them. House and land and weed and food. Make sure everybody nice on the ends. You see money such a thing, dog. It's what everybody sin for. What she make the pussy skin for. Had to teach her tricks first. Make it flip and it go bring more. That's what everybody sing for.
Corruption money.
Money.
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 All right, let me see what's up. Peace. This morning, I was just did my yard, and then I was wondering, was I about to stream? I don't like having the only yard on the block that ain't hit. Like, I gotta be getting up early and go do that. But what's up, though? Yesterday, we was watching some of the claims of this dude. Mark White said, don't forget to challenge that dude from yesterday to a debate. Oh, yeah, I definitely will. But I'm going to do my response video first. But I have to put it together like, you know, I got all the research. That's nothing. I could discourse on this with anybody on the drop of a dime. But I would like to put together a well-formed video.
I'd like to hopefully simplify for this video. How did the Egyptians use and create color, and why do Egyptian women
That's where we
almost
left
always
off.
look lighter in skin than their men? And was there any inner and sometimes hidden meaning within color itself? Well, each color was created by mixing various naturally occurring elements, and each became standardized in time in order to ensure a uniformity in artwork. An Egyptian male was always depicted with a reddish-brown skin, which was achieved by mixing a certain amount of standard red paint with standard brown. Experts say that this color was chosen because it was a realistic representation of the average Egyptian. Women's skin instead was most of the time represented with a mixture of yellow and white, and the reason of the explanation to this is because women tended to work the field a lot less than men. They tended to stay inside, and therefore their skin was lighter. If the difference in skin tone between men and women is darker or lighter depending on how much time they spend outside, then it suggests that even the darker tones we see are mostly a tan rather than the actual natural color that all Egyptians would have. So it is possible that a light brown would be a good representation when it comes to what the ancient Egyptian skin looked like.
When he said that, he was you can just look at people's eyes when they talk. It's certain directions people look in when they doing certain stuff. I ain't even tripping. I'm just having fun. This is no analysis of his points, because we went over all this yesterday and we discussed the categories of these colors. But I'm just tripping off his gestures.
Mostly a tan rather than the actual natural color that all Egyptians would have. So it is possible that a light brown would be a good representation when it comes to what the ancient Egyptian skin looked like. If they were all black in the sense of a Nubian, they would not represent the Nubians and themselves differently in art. And of course,
my man Yurik says, Smash, more research has to be done on Simroset relationship to Nubians, because he said his mother was from Sateti and he's called us, and he was a child of an Upper Egyptian, and Ashayet was his wife. So Ashayet was not his wife. Ashayet was Mentuhotep II's wife. And we gotta, alright, so it might be my fault that when I say Nubians, that's like a group word that lump a lot of people in together. And to say because one Nubian tribe I don't know what the hell you talking about, Judenass, but you hella funny. I ain't even reading your comment. But what I was saying was it might be my fault for lumping all Nubian groups in together. So saying he hated Nubians, no, but that was how he wrote it. He wrote harsh policy towards people from the South. That's a fact. You see what I'm saying? And so maybe he could have still, been from around there, but all Nubian groups didn't get down. They didn't like each other either. So in history, we just got the terms Nubian and in history we just got the term Nehesi. We got the term Nehesi, and then they'll tell you which type of Nehes they talking about. But when he indicated who he was talking about, he didn't say no particular Nehesi. He was just hating on Nubians. You feel me? So I don't want this dude to talk for too long without whatever. So I'm gonna bring this in late. This coming in late on the show. We're gonna listen to that White Crown. Give me a second, one time. I wanna grab some things.
Upper age boy, got that white crown, upper age boy. Babylonian bars, you can really spit it, get it, dagger on me. That harpoon, it ain't for abalone. Phoenician pieces made of Nubian gold. Antediluvian scrolls hit the Nubian poles. And if you wanna debate that, you'll get truly exposed. I'm like the king of Axum, axing. Bring the maxims of Patar back to action. I actually swing my axe to y-axis, 32 degrees west on the y-axis. Try and catch us. Christianity was stole from Kemet, lying. Compare the book of Psalms to Amenope. Sometimes I'm rhyming, I'm just like a shaman, okay?
Some sound alright, but then they act silly. Try conquering my crown, and that's really very silly. Try conquering my crown, and that's really very silly.
I'm a star charting Bantu boy with my bow and arrow. I raise a king in my gnome if I don't know the pharaoh. Explosive and lethal in your dreams like Joseph the Hebrew. And no sending evil wide jet and neck bent. Here to ward that off, I'm not a sage burner. Scroll learner, the page turner. The script writer, put the pen down cause I don't need it. Cause I got the white crown, the upper
I rock the white crown, say top symbol. You rock the red crown, say top metal. You rock the white crown, say top symbol. You rock the red crown, say top metal.
Some sound alright, but then they act silly. Try conquering my crown, and that's really very silly. Try conquering my crown.
All right.
That's really very.
Thank you. Because I knew I had made some coffee, and I left my coffee downstairs. I had to go warm that thing up. I'm tripping, hold on. Let me get right. Oh yeah, we was watching Dude. Where he go? Did I do it on the same page as this?
It's brought to you by Atlas VPN. Elements in each beat, and the reason of the explanation to this is because women tended to work the field a lot less than men. They tended to stay inside, and therefore their skin was lighter. If the difference in skin tone between men and women is darker or lighter depending on how much time they spend outside, then it suggests that even the darker tones we see are mostly a tan rather than the actual natural color that all Egyptians would have. So it is possible that a light brown would be a good representation when it comes to what the ancient Egyptian skin looked like. If they were all black in the sense of a Nubian, they would not represent the Nubians and themselves differently in art, and of course.
So we proved yesterday how that's just a misnomer, that they represented themselves and Nubians different. It's just when they was trying to show different things, they would group people like in what they call the Book of the Gates. But we show how all of that is just a misnomer and a misrepresentation in yesterday's video called Madjai in the Mornings.
A Nubian's skin color is gonna be black, whether he stays inside or outside. The gods are represented with many colors, but they are symbolic when it comes to their skin. They can have a red skin, which usually has to do with aggression.
So let me just go in. Let's just be clear about all this. The god, the black god, Wasser, was black before any other god had a color. You got to know how to beat him up. The oldest color on a Netcher is black on the black god Wasser, going back to the 4th dynasty. 5th dynasty. So we gotta realize. Hold on, Judenaz, you're gonna be able to click the link to talk about whatever you're talking about. You feel me? You'll have your time. Trust me. So it's oh, but you throwing me off, so I gotta stop looking at the link. Yeah, RTP said that the neighbor silently back out of the line agreement. So sometimes his daughter might do the line, and he don't know how men be having she don't know men be having they silent agreements. So she'll mess that up sometimes. But I don't hold it against their household. Because I'm like, oh, somebody else must have did the line. All right, let's get back on it.
in a way. Although it can also symbolize life. Some gods have a blue skin, which represents protection and wisdom. Other gods have a green skin, such as oftentimes Osiris, because it's a connection to the afterlife. And when it comes to black skin in Egyptian art, even though it does have a connection to death, which is why we sometimes see gods such as Anubis having black skin,
See, there they go again.
it was not connected to evil. Red was. So what about the term Kemet? Well, Kemet has been used again by some people trying to push this idea that all Egyptians were black and it was a black civilization, because they say that it means the land of the black.
So first of all, in order for him to be right in some instances, he expands the argument to people saying that all Egyptians were black. That's never an argument mounted by me. We know how the area was. When I argue is the founding civilizations were majority all black, you wouldn't having all of this. I mean, you know, it was a higher percentage of black people and less mixture, even though it was still mixture during that times. But it wasn't, I mean, so we talking about the founding civilizations, which a lot of the time is pre-dynastic. But in order for certain people to be right, they act like someone argues that everybody there was black. Like they just had some type of immigration system that kept people who wasn't black out of there. And no one ever argues that.
Because they say that it means the land of the black, and therefore if the Egyptians refer to their own land as this is the land of the black, then it means that they consider themselves black. But it's interesting that the people that I've read in forums, they say this, but then a minute before that, they actually say, oh, but the Egyptians did never refer to themselves or other people as black and white and brown. That's a modern construct. And this already shows you lack of intellectual honesty, because you can't say that the Egyptian didn't use black, brown and white to describe people, and then a minute afterwards use it when it comes to the translation of the word Kemet when it's convenient to you. Kemet meant black land, meaning that was the color of the land, the soil. Scholars generally believe that this
I guarantee you he couldn't show us, and we will put this up so he should prepare. But it's even hard for the scholars who study the language. Pretty sure he could not show us how Kemet means black land. And I hope he'll take his time to prepare for that. But because there are even anomalies in that, to where we don't normally get land out of the 049 Niu glyph. We get a town or a city center. So when translating the word, I'm going to ask him, and he should do the best to look at his secondary sources and show us how he so strongly can conclude that Kemet means the black land. Because scholars, we put that together from what they leaning on, but I'm pretty sure he don't know the grammatical nuances. Most instances, ta means land, and we don't have a ta in Kemet. But consistent throughout all place names, most place names where they say the land, we have a word ta Mary. Ta Mary. You feel me? Where else? What else? Tamehu, Tashimu, Tashimehu, or whatever. And so I just want to know how he know for a fact that means the black land.
Translation of the word Kemet when it's convenient to you. Kemet meant black land, meaning that was the color of the land, the soil. Scholars generally believe that this name derived from the fertile soil,
and I don't disagree with that either,
over when the Nile flood receded in August. Considering the fact that the very people that pushed this idea of all the ancient Egyptians were black did say on multiple occasions that the Egyptians did not use color as a word to describe people, then I would say on their own terms that it is more probable that Kemet referred to the land being black, not the people.
No, he made a big old mistake. Let's go back. Kemet is not the word of scrutiny. Kim is the word of scrutiny when referring to the people calling themselves black. No one argues that people called themselves black and said, Kemet, 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 I'm Kemet, you're Kemet, we're all Kemet. Kemet is a location, and the root word of Kemet is Kim, which people called themselves. Kim. But let's go back and listen to see how he think he broke it down real quick.
Over when the Nile flood receded in August. Considering the fact that the very people that pushed this idea of all the ancient Egyptians were black did say on multiple occasions that the Egyptians did not use color as a word to describe people, then I would say on their own terms that it is more probable that
Well, he's arguing against somebody that he already had he must have took an L to somebody and had to come make this video, because I'm not the person who says what he's saying. You feel me? So he's arguing to one person's argument right now.
To describe people, then I would say on their own terms that it is more probable that Kemet referred to the land being black, not the people.
And so now most scholars who talk about that agree with what he's saying. I don't necessarily disagree with him, but we are being limited. So what we do is we try to limit. So we say black means all these things. It means death. So why it don't mean death when it's regarding the land? Because again, they say it means all these things, but then they want to get mono, I don't know, give it one definition. You know what I'm saying? When it comes down to that term Kemet. And that's kind of unfair because there's plenty of ways to box that up. If you get any of these scholars to admit that, and this is just for fun, for my archers, when you get any of these scholars to admit that Kemet referred to the black soil, you could just ask them, what did Khnum make man out of? So from the ancient Egyptian perspective, Khnum made man out of this black soil. Now, it would make no sense for them to think that man was made out of this black soil if the man that was made was white or tan. They would have probably proposed that he was made out of Jasher or the red soil, if everybody was red. We just thinking about how man comes to these philosophies of creation. When you admit that Kemet refers to the black soil, all we have to do is refer to Khnum making man out of that black soil. And then if you want an antithesis to that, you go into the Semitic tradition and you find out that Adam was made out of red clay because they was the red people. They wasn't going to make themselves out of no black clay because they turned out red. God.
But when it comes to the analysis of DNA, there are several methods the scientists can use, including the direct PCR, a method of DNA amplification that
I just pause and say we could just, if he want to talk about his pseudo DNA, we can go and look at all of the studies that he gonna use. Let's do it. It's gonna be hella funny. Watch this.
directly from an animal or plant tissue sample without performing DNA isolation and purification steps. This technique greatly reduces experimental time and cost in genotyping and high-volume projects, but it does come with issues surrounding the authentication of the retrieved DNA and the potential contaminations inherent to this method. Say the hot Egyptian climate, the high humidity levels in many tombs, and some of the chemicals used in mummification techniques, in particular sodium carbonate.
Don't even fall for none of this stuff. Boy, it's so easy to see that weak propaganda when you be looking at it. Nowadays, nice video and cool edits while somebody telling a lie. It serves to convince you that they telling the truth. But we're going to get to the biggest part that you should be focusing on that he ain't mentioned yet. But he's trying to mention all of the anomalies with DNA and all of the reasons and the problem. He even switched his voice. But to sound more smart, smarter, you feel me? But he was sounding more smart. He wasn't sounding smarter. But hold on, though. I want to say the truth in the matter is, since I'm having fun, is the biggest anomaly about these tests that he's soon to mention, because it's only a few of them, is where they pulled these specimens from. And how limited the specimens are. Not none of the things that he mentioned so far, but let's see if he go in on that.
Including the direct PCR, a method of DNA amplification directly from an animal or plant tissue sample without performing DNA isolation and purification steps. This technique greatly reduces experimental time and cost in genotyping and high-volume projects, but it does come with issues surrounding the authentication of the retrieved DNA and the potential contaminations inherent to this method. Say the hot Egyptian climate, the high humidity levels in many tombs, and some of the chemicals used in mummification techniques, in particular sodium carbonate. All of these contribute to DNA degradation and are thought to render the long-term preservation of the DNA of mummies improbable. Now, some of you might ask, why bother with ancient mummies at all? Why don't you just check and analyze the DNA on modern day Egyptians? And the thing is that in order to do that, you would have to have a perfect genetic continuity over thousands of years, millennia. And that is very improbable considering the recent population admixtures from both other areas of Africa, Europe, considering Roman and Greek colonization, and the Islamic expansion. Even without genetic proof, it would be very unlikely to expect such a perfect continuity between ancient Egyptians and modern Egyptians, and this study in fact demonstrates so. 166 samples from 151 mummified individuals were examined for this study, 90 of which you will find in the later analysis in the supplementary data 1. According to radiocarbon dates, these samples can be classified into 3 time periods: pre-Ptolemaic, Ptolemaic, and Roman period. Scientists found that the 3 ancient Egyptian group clusters supported a certain level of genetic.
Y'all hear all the stuff he's saying? And didn't even tell you where the specimens was all from Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, I'm sorry. Hold on. Y'all didn't trip off that? I'm just saying. He didn't say that yet, but we have to be clear on that. He said the Roman period. So if you take an Egyptian mummy from the Roman period and you want to see what they look like, what you think they're going to look like. He said the Ptolemaic period. And he didn't say the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom. He said the pre-Ptolemaic period. Think about this. This is so Eurocentric, it's crazy. Somebody tell me what the pre-Ptolemaic period is. The pre-Ptolemaic period is everything before Ptolemy. Is that how that works? Before Ptolemy or whatever? Is that how that works? It sounds like he talking about a little bit of time right before the Ptolemies. But I've been studying this for a while. You talking about the pre-Ptolemaic. So basically you got it from 3 white. They took the specimens from 3 white periods. Shout out to all your toys on. He like me though. Me and him could still kick it because he got them toys and stuff up on the speaker. But your speaker mad dirty in the back. You need to lightweight take a length brush to that speaker. It's hella white stuff. You be spitting on that speaker? Look at all that white on that speaker. I'm gonna have to screenshot that. That's just that quick YouTube cleanup. But you really be getting it in. But anyway.
Ptolemaic and Roman period. Scientists found that the three ancient Egyptian group clusters supported a certain level of genetic continuity over 1300 years, but showed a higher affinity with modern-day people from the Levant and the Middle East. An affinity
of course they did, because you went to the white period, and the pre-white period. This is what I be saying. You got mummies from the Ptolemaic period, the Roman period, and whatever the pre-Ptolemaic period is. You know, right before the Ptolemies, it was like Libyan, it was like Persians and stuff. That's how they gonna tell you that wasn't nobody. That's how they be doing with the DNA stuff. And it's not just me showing that. I'm gonna pull out, yeah, that speaker keep killing me in the back. But I'm gonna pull out a scientific paper if I can, if I can find it in my computer, that speaks directly towards this. Not just written by Soy Kiata, but it was a group of scholars, and he was one of them. So,
supported a certain level of genetic continuity over 1300 years, but showed a higher affinity with modern-day people from the Levant and the Middle East. An affinity supported on some of the individuals with the find of the Y chromosome haplogroups. On the nuclear level, scientists joined their data, called the SNP data, together with both ancient genomes and modern-day genomes, and found that the ancient Egyptian samples were further away from modern-day Egyptians and closer to the modern-day Near Easterners and Europeans. The scientists that performed these tests were extremely professional, but you can...
He actually wants Egyptians to be white, bro. Listen to what he said.
Scientists found that the three ancient Egyptian group clusters supported a certain level of genetic continuity over 1300 years, but showed a higher affinity with modern-day people from the Levant and the Middle East. An affinity supported on some of the individuals with the find of the Y chromosome haplogroups. On the nuclear level, scientists joined their data, called the SNP data, together with both ancient genomes and modern-day genomes, and found that the ancient Egyptian samples were further away from modern-day Egyptians and closer to the modern-day Near Easterners and Europeans. The scientists that performed these tests...
So, now we know that Easterners and Europeans. Just like that. Blam, there you have it. Come from dude who couldn't even see he had 2 length balls in his hair. For real though. At least hit them length balls, bruh. Before you get the kicking knowledge. But I'm just joking. But and you can learn a lot from people who don't know they got fat length balls in their hair. But you can really. But in all seriousness, we showed how they took samples from one time period, and then the conclusion of those samples was that ancient Egyptians was closer to Near Easterners and Europeans. Closer to them than who? Than black people, because that's his video. That's what it's about.
Were extremely professional, but you can imagine that both Afrocentric groups and Eurocentric groups tried to use these and tackle these differently, with Eurocentric trying to then prove that the ancient Egyptians were European and they were white, and Afrocentric trying to instead saying that these mummies probably were just foreigners and were not actual Egyptians. I do think that the truth lies in the middle, meaning that even though we do need to accept the fact that this test only deals with the mummies found in a specific area in Middle Egypt, therefore it does not necessarily represent the genetic makeup.
Not only a little area, but in a time period that was isolated when white people was in control. Greeks and Romans. That's hella fair. Like, go to the 25th dynasty specimens, pull up their mummies, and tell me who the ancient Egyptians were. You're not going to do that. You're going to say, no, these was just a group of Nubian pharaohs. This ain't who the ancient Egyptians were. But you're going to go to the white time period and say this who they were. And he's trying to take a stance. I mean, I'm giving him his credit because he's speaking towards some of the things that need to be spoken towards when dealing with this stuff right here.
The entirety of the population of all of Egypt, and of course there would have been variety. But it does strengthen the idea that Egypt was a multi-ethnic society, and some of the Egyptians that lived...
It kind of strengthens the idea that Egypt was a multi-ethnic society when you go into the later time periods where your emperors came and conquered Egypt. That's the time period you're dealing with. But if you want to go into the founding civilizations, it's quite funny that we would have to go into the areas of Lake Nasir where they flooded all that out. See, and so the founding civilizations is farther south down the Nile and a lot of Combe Ombo, and then you want to go further south, it's all flooded. So now modern scholars can't even go into those areas and pull up, well, let's just say that they ain't gonna find no mummy that was just in the dirt. So a mummy would have been in some type of a tomb, and they did move. They had what was called the Sudan Restoration or Project or something like that moved a lot of that stuff before they flooded the lake. But that don't leave out the facts that when you want to go look for evidence of the founding civilizations being further south in Africa, you can't do it because they flooded it.
And were mummified in Egypt would have been considered from a modern day standard perhaps even white. Does that mean that the ancient Egyptian is a white or a European civilization? I don't think so. I think that more studies on mummies will probably reveal that the southern part of Egypt had a higher percentage of individuals that we would today call black, and I'm still inclined to believe that the majority of the Egyptian population would have been the tanned, olive-skinned people. Egypt was
Well, you have to show evidence of that. I wouldn't be mad to say, but who are the tanned olive-skinned people? It's tanned olive-skinned people that's black. So let's stop this nonsense. Is the tanned olive-skinned people, they can't be black? Hell of my homies is tanned olive-skinned. But he trying to say these other ones that ain't black. Which, I never argued that some of those people wasn't there. It would be kind of crazy not to. But to act like they made up the contingency of the people called Egyptian, even, I didn't think that would be the case in old times.
But it does strengthen the idea that Egypt was a multi-ethnic society, and some of the Egyptians that lived and were mummified in Egypt would have been considered from a modern day standard perhaps even white. Does that mean that the ancient Egyptian is a white or a European civilization? I don't think so. I think that more studies on mummies will probably reveal that the southern part of Egypt had a high...
So it's so much crazy. Now you just got to notice this. Let's go back. The same people who give examples for blackness always meaning something else never do that with white. He just keep consistently doing it, and they never do that. White just mean white. If they show a ancient Egyptian that's painted white, then that's evidence that white people was in Kemet. For all of these scholars, whatever he is. It's always evidence that white people was there. But when they show a person painted black, there's always some mythological reason. But he keep on showing like this one, and look at her. She was white or whatever. But I'm like, no, bro, you can't have it both ways.
Olive-skinned people. Egypt was an African civilization, but it wasn't living in a vacuum. It was in a specific geolocation that connected the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Southern Europe. And we do know, and we have Roman authors and Greek authors that tell us that there were areas and cities whereby the Greek settlements were so significant that up to 30% of the population was Greek in towns that we would otherwise just call ancient Egyptian. And classical authors do tell us that after a few generations, the only way to really distinguish these people was to hear how they spoke and what language they used. So considering the data we have available right now, my opinion is that the Egyptians were a multi-ethnic population. The majority would have been brown, some would have been black, some might have been white. I'm more than happy to be proven wrong by new data. In fact, that is the very...
So I'm just keeping it buck, and I ain't got nothing about it. If you go through all the time period of what we call ancient Egypt, what he said is true. But if we want to have a more highly detailed conversation, because that answer is not enough to speak towards what we are discussing. Like if we talking about Dynasty 0 to Dynasty 6, there's no chance of even including anything white. You talk about Dynasty 6 to Dynasty 12, you can start including something that they say is tan, like how he referenced a tan people. We have these people from the East coming in from Dynasty 6 through 12. Nothing white going on, no place remotely close. You go to about the 18th dynasty, we start to get something that you can associate with white, like Mitanni people around the, they ain't all the way to the Georgia area like that, but Mitanni just being an area that was still, I don't want to say Mesopotamian because it was up higher than those rivers. But the Mitanni people that came into Kemet with Amenhotep III, he had 317 Mitanni women come in. And I'm pretty sure they eventually got into the culture. But indeed, they were part of the harem. So this is funny. Because if we look at how it really break down, those women were untouchable by the average person. They were part of the harem. Not saying they were the only ones who came in, but we talking about things that we can actually look at on text and not speculate over. Those people could be considered white in the sense, but a Greek ain't traditionally considered white. We would be talking more along that German line of people, like who came with that theory. You know what I'm saying? Like Greeks looked at themselves as they wanted to be considered darker. We could find plenty of people who reference that. They say black was a sign of masculinity to the Greeks. And so that's why one of the Ptolemies called himself Kim.
Ancient Egyptian. And classical authors do tell us that after a few generations, the only way to really distinguish these people was to hear how they spoke and what language they used. So considering the data we have available right now, my opinion is that the Egyptians were a multi-ethnic population. The majority would have been brown, some would have been black, some might have been white. I'm more than happy to be proven wrong by...
Like when you get up to them time periods. So basically the Greeks, just like he said, even though Greeks ain't traditionally, white people claiming that, but they wasn't on it like that. They was more of a friendly, they wasn't on it like, oh no, I'm white. But look, when you come up to after the Persians, then yeah, the things that he said is true. But if you want to go earlier, Necropolis, what is it called? Something? The Greek town in the middle of Lower Egypt, about 700 BC. But then they have another Greek extraction or a Greek colony in Libya going back 1000 BC. So let's not even trip that what's facts is facts. And the way that you lose arguments is not just accepting some inevitable facts. Like, it was some Greeks there because people wasn't haters like today. But we see how they expanded things to act like Greeks, because you could say Greeks is there was white. Now, when Romans get there, you might be even closer to saying that, because that's along that line of Latinium, Spanish type stuff. But people don't really know that, though. They didn't even think Latinium was a place. They thought I just made that up. Let me see. Let me see if I can bring that up. Latinium, let's see. So maybe I could be wrong, but I just remember the something that I found about an extraction that people had not even ever. It was how the Romans denoted an area at a very short period of time. But since I typed up Latinium and it's giving me some other stuff, I don't like to trip. I don't like to try to Latin classes during the Roman Empire. So yeah, I'm just gonna forget about that because I don't want to go off on a tangent trying to prove something out of my memory. You know what I'm saying? And then go off on a tangent and be tripping. Yeah. Oh, somebody said Latinum. Okay, he tried to fix me. Let me see if I can get it right. Oh, now they say this is a gold or something, but no, I remember having this being a place name for a short amount of time, but I still could be wrong, so I'm not going to go into there. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it alone. But anyway, that nevertheless, everybody know Romans, Latin, and how that turns out with the world. You know what I'm saying? With the Spanish and all the stuff and all the things that happens in Italy, and you know what that turned into. And we can start having some of the Moorish conversation too in the discussion. But I mean, I ultimately, I don't even know if I disagree with. Ultimately, I don't know if I just disagree with this video. It's just stuff that need to be straightened out that was missaid in this video. Cause when we start to break down the argument, they all lose on the points that are the strongest, like the founding civilizations. Who set this up? We don't want to know who conquered it and who put it into their empire, because that's what we learned. The Roman Empire put Egypt in it. The Greek Empire or whatever put Egypt in it. Or somebody said Hispaniola. Okay, that's a good one. That might have been what I was thinking of. Thanks for saying that, my man, Brother Curtis. Because I might have been thinking about Hispanic. And you said Hispaniola was a place. Okay. You might be straightening me out. See? So even though we see it's still through history, it come down back to. So what we just don't understand is the whiteness of a Spaniard. And we just need to talk about this just like men, we ain't tripping. Because in actuality, some of the hate that we see today, even between people who consider themselves Mexican and some people who consider themselves black, is rooted in a lot of stuff that we don't even know about. Like when the Spaniards start smashing on the original Mexicans who was a dark-skinned people, and then, you know what I'm saying? That's how you got some dark-skinned Mexicans, some light-skinned Mexicans, because the Spaniards, who was like the white people, came over and smashed on them in those wars. And then they took on the Spanish language. You see what I'm saying? And so, but you got to remember, the Spanish only enabled themselves to do that by finally conquering the Moors. After not conquering, but they have a reconquest called the Reconquista, where they go on an 800, 700-year war against the Moors, trying to get their land back. Well, the Reconquista wasn't 700 years. They was getting hands put on. And then they started like what we call the reconquest stuff. And so that leads to all of this stuff and all of this Christianity coming to Americas and all of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? As we see on various shows. But when people don't even know that, so now that deep-rooted that deep-rooted hate that you don't understand that might be still coming up in some people goes back to that, you know, fights between Spaniards and Africans throughout history. And the largest contingency of Moors weren't Africans, but there were a lot of African. Well, I don't want to say that. Let me take that back. A lot of contingency of Moors, because Africans is a lot of different type of people. But people be just trying to say the Moors was all black Africans. That don't appear to be true. But yeah, there were black African Moors, of course. A lot of them. You feel me? But when you start to look for the generals and the chiefs and people who gave the orders, they don't be drawn looking like no brothers. You know what I'm saying? So that stuff be going back far, but I just went off on a tangent. But hey, we just chilling, learning. I ain't even open no Zoom. I need to open the Zoom and get the chat on the main screen. You have a meeting? Oh, I did open the Zoom? End the other meeting? I don't know what that was about. Join with computer audio. Man. Somebody said Mexico had many slaves. Yeah. Let me see if I can find the video. YouTube. All right. I'm gonna share this link. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I was talking about at that time, the Timotep. I just shared the link if anybody want to tap in and correct me where I fell off. If not, I'm about to tap in with the chat. I mean, you know, while I wait or whatever, I'm going to tap in with the chat. Let me see. I need to get that off the screen, yeah. So I can keep seeing it. But Mexicans tend to mix more with European. Well, you know, so after what's happened in history, just like what happened to black people in America, the process of becoming an African American entailed a lot of things. Well, the process of becoming a Mexican also entailed a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? And if we know about all those wars that were fought between the Spanish and the original Mexican people, and then how the Spanish won, and then how now you kind of be mad at black people. That's some of that Spaniard blood. That's what that is. So basically, the wars that we're talking about lead directly into the formation of the United States. 1492, they say Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. 1492 was the last year of the war between the Moors and the Christians. You feel me? And so that's how that went down. And so since they had finally took the last city, I think it was Granada, when they finally took Granada, then they was able to, they got some bread, you know, they bossing up, and then Queen Ferdinand commissioned what? Ferdinand commissioned Christopher Columbus and them that they could ride out and stuff. The most feared debater on the planet is in the building, JJ 7000. Yeah. So yeah, it was going down, but you know, it is what it is. Probably gonna get out today and enjoy some of the springtime that's starting to happen. You know, I really ain't tripping. I ain't too excited about nothing. I've been on some rock crawler RC cars going hella slow, not even going fast. Razzcast does a nice breakdown of Moorish history. That's interesting. The conquest of Constantinople was the capture of the capital of the Byzantine Empire by the Ottoman in 1453. What that got to do with it? I'm just trying to figure that out. So maybe one of the blackest factions of the Moors would probably have been the Almoravids, who came through smashing on some fundamentalist stuff after a while. You know what I'm saying? And they was like, y'all ain't doing this right. But I don't even know if the Almoravids was like all black like we think. They just was the ones coming from Shalom to the Shah. Don't forget that you don't need to show me no differentiated respect, the Shah. So you might want to say something else besides Shalom. Because Shalom to somebody from the Kemetic perspective is obeisance. Like you ain't trying to bow to me, so don't say Shalom. But you feel me? I'm just keeping it real. But, you know, we accept that from some people. It's cool. You know? But that's how that worked from the Kemetic perspective. Sharma is like to bow to somebody. You trying to debate Sabio? Let's hook that up. JJ? Come on, all right, let's get back onto some teachings then. Let me see. I'm going to go through my clips because I got my clips for a reason. I think I had a clip to address some of the stuff that dude said. I need to get more clips though. Oh, dang. All right, I can't find it. Let me see what this say right here.
Western European scholars who somehow made Egypt appear more Mediterranean than African, that they were focused on the texts and the art, which were not something that they got from Nubia. And that in both cases, actually, it's an elite perspective, because the people in ancient Western European scholars who somehow made Egypt appear more Mediterranean than African, that they were focused on the texts and the art, which were not...
So Western European scholars made Egypt appear somehow more Mediterranean than African. That was a cool one. Let's see what he's talking about.
Not something that they got from Nubia. And that in both cases, actually, it's an elite perspective, because the people in ancient Egypt that created this art and this image of Nubia were the elite, the people who could read and write and create and access art. And the same goes for people doing Egyptology in the late 19th and early 20th century. They were also from the upper class society, and they wanted to portray this particular image of Egypt. So the image that we have of Nubia is based on these two quite colonial lenses. And I also want to say here that I'm talking about Nubia specifically, but really this could apply to any culture where you've got sort of one dominant or supposedly dominant culture and another. And so we end up with images like this, where we have these non-Egyptian, in this case Nubian foreigners, being depicted as prisoners with their hands tied behind their backs, and in this case the foreigners, as I said, are Nubians. But what we need to remember is that these images were created by these elite people with a limited audience, and they were created by people who had an ideology and an image to maintain, that Egypt was supposed to be seen as powerful. And the problem for Egyptology is that that idea has been picked up by these late 19th and early 20th century scholars, and it's...
Yo, shout out to Indigenous African for the $20 contribution to the show. He asked the question, how did you write Where Do I Go? And how did you come up with the concept for the Hierophant or the Hierophant album? Very good question. where did I go? I just tapped in on what I was feeling at that moment in time. So you got to remember that was earlier in my development, and about 2012 when we were still thinking about, 2012 was supposed to be Y2K and all that stuff. And so that's the brain space that I was in, thinking about where do I go if it was about to go down like that. And basically we ain't going nowhere, like I was saying in the song. We're gonna be right here. We're gonna get through this. And so that's what I was on with that kind of like. And the concept for the Hierophant album, I felt like I was gonna be sharing some type of information on that record. That was like I was deciphering some stuff or just breaking some stuff down. What's up with Rasan though?
What's going on?
Chilling?
Yeah, I hit you up because I got contention with all these Moors, man, because like I said, I used to be a member or whatnot, but the history don't make sense. And so the organization, especially the founder, put all this information, these pamphlets and books and whatnot. And if you're not totally indoctrinated, you got an open mind, you start reading more. East African originally, right? And then they got permission from some pharaoh in Egypt to sojourn across Africa to West Africa, and they land in West Africa and set up and all that other stuff, But they started as Moabites and become Moroccans or whatnot, right? So how are you an East African, right? And then you journey west, but you practicing, you journey west, become a West African, but you're still practicing the East African religion, or you're still practicing Islam or whatnot. It don't make sense. A lot of it don't make sense. And then, they teach that anybody who's melanated are Moors. Anybody from South America, Central America, North America, Moors. Not my father just did his DNA, and my father and his father, they Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau never been in the Moorish Empire, so you couldn't never be a Moor or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? But I got contention. I'm just trying to show them that everybody can't be Moors. Mostly we ain't Moors. And I got a homeboy who used to be a 5%er. He's so indoctrinated. He argued me up and down about it now. It's very crazy to me, for real. It's really crazy. And I used to be a crazy person like them too.
Well, they base
I'm just
some
trying
of
to
that
arm
stuff.
myself with history so I can.
What you say?
No, I'm just saying I was just trying to arm myself with more history. You know what I'm saying?
I heard that.
Am I choppy?
Yeah, it was kind of choppy, but
Okay.
we got you though. I mean, I heard the majority of what you said. Yeah, there's, if we don't be so politically motivated, they can find some truth to some of that, but it's over exaggerated. And that's just how I seen it when I looked over some of those claims. We all read all the books, The Golden Age of the Moor and Ivan Van Sertima's works, all those stuff. I think that was Stanley Lane Poole who wrote that book. And I think just at that time period with the information that brothers was getting, they didn't go as far as the Moorish Science Temple go. The scholars didn't go that far, but they provided some information that helped those temples or what have you kind of like mess things up. You know what I'm saying? All the way down to people be talking about, I don't know. Some people